slow down and listen in. My next guest is here to answer your fertility questions. I want to welcome to the show Dr. Christina Burns. Committed, compassionate, and highly skilled in multiple disciplines, she is the pioneer founder of Naturna, an integrative health center dedicated to the comprehensive fusion of Eastern medicine and Western science. With 12 years of clinical practice, Christina seeks to empower women to achieve their optimal life and health goals through natural medicine practices, informed integrative nutrition, lifestyle management, and personalized mind-body programs. Today, a frequent speaker at fertility clinics and guest lecturer at leading educational institutions, she is well known for her innovative views on the topics of integrative medicine. Her international studies and work alongside esteemed practitioners have given Christina a global perspective on health and healing that has contributed immensely to her impressive success rate. Welcome so much. That is such a very amazing bio. And I know you're going to be here to answer all of our questions on fertility, on infertility, and also on this COVID-19 pandemic. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for today's topic and to be here with you.
I know we really connected, so I was very much looking forward to this chat. And such an important topic, even though I'm not having any more kids. All of our friends, all the moms, all the women out there listening, it would appear that infertility rates are on the rise. Is that true? Are we just talking about it more than we were 50 years ago, where everything was kind of hush hush? But it would be hard to go about your life and not run into either yourself, your friends, your family members that didn't suffer miscarriages or were going through IVF or other fertility treatments. What's the state of fertility in today's world?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think it's kind of a mix of the things that you mentioned. I definitely think we're talking about it more. We're seeing, influence post about it. We're getting more open about it. It used to be so underground, and people felt like a deep degree of shame to even admit that they might be having issues with it. And so I think it's kind of nice that we're blowing the ceiling off of the topic and being more open about it, because it's really an awful thing to be suffering in silence with. It would appear that infertility is on the rise, that there are higher rates of infertility, but there are also might be more people just seeking out help faster. I know as a New York City practitioner that I see women that are like 30 years old that really don't have any fertility issues, that try at home for 2 months and then they go to the fertility doctor and say they have a fertility issue and start undergoing some kind of treatment.
Isn't that a little extreme? You would think, is that our society? Because we're just, let's have it now. I mean, we're cultures that it's got to happen right now. I mean, to go after 2 months, it doesn't seem like a very long time. Is that?
No, it doesn't. And, with the United States being a for-profit medical place, it kind of is in the clinic's best interest to take on more patients. That said, I think the doctors come from a good place in saying that, you probably don't need this, but if you really want to pursue it, then okay, I'll be your partner in this journey type of thing.
Yeah, I'll charge you the thousands and thousands of dollars and I'll take you on as a patient.
Yeah. So I think they're sort of like, it's not like I think like the doctors or centers are like money grubbing places. I think they're meeting the demand of the patients. The patients are asking for these treatments, albeit probably prematurely in a lot of cases. And so the doctors are meeting the demand. Now, that said, there are women and couples that really do need IVF. So it's not as if there's not a place for it. Somebody who has blocked tubes, or somebody who might be kind of running out of time. Or I even saw a patient whose husband had HIV and she didn't. So they were able to use IVF to not have to pass that off to offspring, or for her to contract it. So very amazing advances in technology that I think are so useful. But I do think that there's maybe it's being used too frequently in place of the more basic kind of things that you could do for your lifestyle and fertility. Another thing that is contributing to more seeking out of fertility care is advanced aging, basically like advanced maternal age, as they call
it. Which is 35, which is kind of sad. I know we're not giving birth to children in the field anymore and dying by 40, but damn.
Right. I mean, I know.
People are definitely waiting longer to have their first child, and people that are going in and that are well, I'm a high risk pregnancy. I was like, why? Well, I'm 36. I'm like, ooh, okay.
You're like,
I know.
that doesn't make any sense. I know. I actually had all three of my children over the age of 35. And the doctors were like, well, because of your age. I'm like, oh, because I'm an old mom.
Do you think that will change, like catch up to like the fact that we're not dying at 40 ever, that, they'll kind of push that, like maybe even just a few years, like above 40, if you haven't had your first child? I mean, are you seeing that it's the case that age is not as huge of a factor in fertility or infertility, or are we still?
Oh no, it's definitely a factor.
Okay, all right.
And we,
damn it.
I don't think it's going to change. I know. I wish
we're not getting any better with age. That's too bad. Okay.
No, we get better in so many ways. Unfortunately, our ovaries don't really listen to that part of things, but yeah, no, I mean, in terms of like pregnancy and advanced maternal age, they're about the data and the statistics. So if statistically a woman tends to have more complications in their pregnancy or their birth after the age of blah, 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 then they're going to be offering managed care accordingly, right? In terms of fertility, we see a clear decline in fertility starting actually at the age of 32, but very dramatically at the age of 35 and afterwards, where the ability to get pregnant, according to the statistics, is actually abysmal by the time you're in your 40s. Like by 44, it's something like 0.5% or 0.05. It's so incredibly low. And I feel like a lot of that is obviously gathered by in studies when women are undergoing IVF, and IVF success is not high in women in older age groups. It's just not. And it's harder to get pregnant naturally also, but there are still eggs in there often that can be viable. It's just being patient with the process and knowing that it might be a longer road than it would have been if you were trying to do it at age 30.
Sure. Mm-hmm. And when we talk about, I think, the overall health of women and, in integrative medicine, we can talk about the biggest barriers to fertility as it relates to the modern woman, but even overall health. And I can speak from my own experience. I'm dealing with estrogen dominance, my entire body under adrenal fatigue. And I've been, working on this for the last several years with a really incredible functional medicine practitioner. I walk in, I'm like, I'm not stressed. I understand. And she's like, but your body is under stress. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about the environmental factors. I mean, I don't eat anything in plastic. We very rarely go out to eat. I have cleaning products. I eat organic. I cook 95% of my food. I'm putting clean organic products on my body. And yet I am still under an extreme amount of stress from a physical and a cellular level. Does the environment have to do environmental factors in how we're living our life in today's society? And I would say 95% of those people aren't doing what I'm doing, and I'm still suffering. Is that a big factor into overall women's health?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned our exposure to toxins. This is huge, right? And so it's nice that you're trying to eliminate as many of your exposure points as you can, because it's coming through water, through air, through electronics, through plastics, so.
Yeah, we're in Indiana and we're like 97 of the least healthiest out of the top 100 big cities. We're 97 for air quality, water quality, just quality of life. So thanks, Indiana.
Wow. Oh my God. Yeah. That's crazy. But yeah, so I think some of it is toxic exposure. I think a lot of it in today's age is that women were so plugged in. So even if we don't feel that we're necessarily really stressed, we're constantly on. And so if you're constantly plugged in and constantly on, that starts sending messages to your cells and to your hormones. And so this kind of constantly being plugged in and constantly having our mind stimulated makes it so our nervous system is overstimulated, which will have a certain impact on our reproductive hormones and how they behave. For example, progesterone is really affected by stress hormones. Even if, again, you don't feel like you're stressed, if you're wired all the time doing this, doing that, then it might put your progesterone down. And then you're into some version of estrogen dominance, as you call it, which can lead to anything from mood swings to weight gain, to heavy periods, to all sorts of achy body, puffiness, all sorts of hormonal health, right? So I think from my perspective, what I see in this dynamic age of women of being really ambitious and just wanting to create and do is that we're on a lot of the time. So if you mix being sort of not being able to wind down, so having more of that fight or flight response, kind of flooding your body all the time, you mix toxins into that, you mix like kind of eating on the fly, even if you're eating healthy things, if you're not sitting down and eating and allowing digestion, so I think it's coming from different angles. Obviously, there's an issue with overeating refined foods these days. And, for my patients that don't eat refined foods, I'm like, okay, where's the sugar coming in? Because it's coming in from somewhere. I can see it in their, what's going on with their physiology. Wine is a sugar, right? That's a really common way that people are taking it in. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're eating candies all day. It could be too many sort of bread type situations, or it could be that evening cup or two of that nice grape juice.
That's right. I just had a woman on who's a weed mom. So I'm testing out my cannabis and my endocannabinoid system to see if I can switch from being a wine mom to a weed mom. So far, my success rate is not super high. I'm definitely still a wino. I'm like, okay, I don't have a wine receptor in my body. That's the kind of person I am. I love to just take in tons of information and then figure out what works for me. And so I was testing out the whole THC component, and I just don't think that it works well with my body chemistry. So I'm combating the sugar. I get that. No, it's tough. I mean, my whole podcast of Mom Slow Down it needs to be instruction for myself. I have to listen to it. We are running at a super high rate. We are multitasking all the time, in our personal life and our social life and managing our kids professionally. We're doing more than we ever have. What is the answer to all of that? I mean, thank gosh for doctors like you that are here to help us so we can keep the human race going, but that's not sustainable.
No. And as we grow our family, we're just taking on more and more. It's like the juggle is real kind of thing. We want to do everything, and we have the option now to do that. It's not like we're being forced to stay in the home. We can go out and do things. And, now with the World Wide Web and things like podcasts and everything, we can be delivering our message on so many different mediums. And so, this sort of type A ambitious woman syndrome, there was a book called Rushing Woman Syndrome written by a doctor named Libby Weaver. And that's exactly it. We're so inspired and creating and doing all this stuff, which is feeding our soul in one way, but our physiology is responding and saying, you need to slow down. Otherwise, this is going to have an impact on you. And so what I usually recommend is that you've got to find balance somewhere. And I don't want to damper someone's ambitions or interests or inspiration. So it's like, you've got to be integrating things that are going to help slow down and eliminate the things that are going to make you more overstimulated. If you're already on fire, caffeine, probably not a great addition, right? Sugar's another thing that can kind of send your nervous system off kilter. And then maybe, is it meditation that you're going to try to come back to center? Is it acupuncture that you're integrating? Is it a lot of time in nature? So it's like something has got to bring the balance of the yin and yang back, right? Because we're way too far in sort of the active part of our existence, and we're not honoring that we need rest and recovery. And that's not just physically, it's mentally, because we can be lying in bed, but if you're still on your phone the whole time.
100%. And this is a good jump into integrative medicine and what you do. Talk to us about this practice, how it combines Western and Eastern medical theories and practices. And what is your help for the modern woman? What can you do when we're all suffering silently or out loud? I think everyone listening could hear a little bit of themselves in those descriptions. I mean, even me as a yoga practitioner and meditator, I'm like, I get it. I know I'm still running at 1,000 miles an hour. And as much as I talk about mindfulness, meditation, rest is valuable, it is a constant battle to put those practices into my daily life.
So I love that you asked about integrative medicine, because it's essentially what I've dedicated my life to. It's the notion of improving the whole paradigm of healthcare by integrating the strengths of different forms of medicine. So we've been very Western medicine dominant in the way that we've approached our healthcare. And while there are amazing solutions in Western medicine, there's also a huge lack of answers for a big portion of the population. And when we go first to Western medicine, we're neglecting the entire sort of lifestyle issue because our doctors are not trained in nutrition, in lifestyle counseling. And so, we're not learning the basic things to take care of ourselves.
And to take a pill for that society.
Yeah. And I think, I imagine that the doctors are frustrated by it too, but they just it's literally not built into their education to learn about how your food affects you and how, the amount of sleep you get affects you and these basic things, your stress levels, what have you. So they're just kind of counseling in the things they know what to do. Like, okay, let's do this lab test. Let's give you this medication or let's do this surgery. And that's their wheelhouse kind of thing. But there's this whole other realm that we could be making use of so that we don't have to do the surgery, so that we don't have to be on a litany of pills, so that we can feel more well and more balanced. And so sorry, go ahead.
No, are there ways, I guess education would be the way to start to change this for the future? Are there schools out there that are bridging the gap between Western and Eastern medicine, like medical schools that are challenging kind of the Western medicine only philosophy so that we are educating new doctors to come into the United States and have a more integrative education? Or do they have to still seek it out completely independently?
They're mostly still seeking it out independently. They may have like a guest lecturer, like somebody like me kind of thing.
Yeah.
And maybe they have the option of taking like a very introductory nutrition course for a single semester.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, it's really a bummer because from Eastern medicine and naturopathic medicine, there's this principle that's the physician as teacher. And so when you come to see us, we're in the position of teaching you how to be well. And there's a Chinese proverb that says to neglect the diet is to waste the time of the physician. So basically, like, you will not get the results you want unless you participate. And the ethos of my company, the Naturna Institute, is empowerment through knowledge. It's that idea of like lead a horse to water kind of thing. And when I have a new patient, I'm like, I'm going to help you, but you have to help yourself. And we're going to get further and faster if you participate in this journey. If you think that a bunch of needles are going to fix all your problems, they'll give you a opportunity to create shifts within yourself, but really it's on you to make the changes that you need to make to be well in your life kind of thing. So integrative medicine integrates the best of the Western world and the lab testing and procedures and what have you. But it's also using the strengths of Eastern medicine, of naturopathic medicine, of functional medicine. And so we're looking at, how can we use herbs? How can we use vitamins? How can we use the diet? What kind of exercise are you doing? And does that make sense for you? All these little things so that actually accumulate into the bigger picture, because generally it's what we're doing on a day-to-day basis that is creating the state of affairs in our body and mind.
So talk about your typical client patient. What do they look like? How old are they? What kind of issues are they coming in to see you? Kind of walk me through that process.
Sure. I would say most of my patients are between the ages of 30 and say 45, but I span the age group of anything from like 20 to 65 in women. And I see mostly women. I'm a women's health specialist. I will occasionally help with male cases of fertility or autoimmune health or what have you, but that's usually as a favor to one of my ladies. So I'm generally dealing with women who are trying to get pregnant, and a lot of them are already in the throes of IVF and have had a bunch of failures, and they don't know why they're having failures. Maybe their doctor has referred them to me. Maybe a friend has referred them to me, and I sort of break down the history of everything with them. We dissect their day-to-day, their lifestyle. We make a plan with supplements, with nutrition, with acupuncture, herbal medicine, if necessary. So fertility patients are what I see a lot of, and tough cases of infertility are what I see a lot of. So it's generally when somebody ends up in my office, they're like, I never really wanted to do this, but I don't have any other options. Nothing else is working. And I'm like, that's okay, because that's what I've been seeing most of my career. And I like a good challenge. And then, there are some women that I see that are earlier in the preconception planning stage, where they want to learn about their fertility, how to time their intercourse, because that's an interesting thing, is that so these women that go to the fertility doctor doesn't even really break down like when to have sex.
You would think that's like the first thing you need to know.
Yeah. I have people that will come to me and be like, I'm admitting that I was not timing sex properly, but I just was sick of dealing with it. And
we're just hoping
went to IVF.
That it would work. I guess it's like, okay, when the mood strikes us.
Well, they didn't realize until after, because a lot of them are using these apps.
Right.
That are sort of guesstimating their ovulation time. And it's not accurate, because not everybody ovulates like day 14 to 16 of their cycle. Like some are day 18, 19, some are day 9 or 10. And so really there are things that women could be doing to track their cycle so that they can be timing their intercourse properly and get pregnant naturally. So I see a lot of fertility patients. I also see women dealing with hormone hell, as I call it. So it could be, somebody bringing their teenage daughter to me that has acne and mood issues and weight gain. And so I'm helping them with that situation. Peri-menopause is something I see a ton of. Peri and post-menopause. Usually post-menopause I see a little bit less of in terms of the hormonal hell, but there's still kind of a remnants of it. But peri-menopause, when the hormones are shifting and changing and the cycles are becoming a little less predictable and the symptoms are sort of all over the place, is very disconcerting. And I find that my ambitious ladies, because I would say my demographic is mostly being
high functioning women,
yes, like yourself. And so they're really distraught because they're not high functioning when they're in this state. They've got brain fog. They can't sleep well. They can't control their emotions. They're bleeding a bunch during their cycle. Like they're feeling like they're wearing a fat suit and they don't know why, it's awful.
Please
so
help us.
Yes. So,
is it called, are you saying hormonal health or hormonal hell? That's what I thought you said. I was like, yeah. I was like, okay, both work, but I definitely, hormonal.
Yeah, the hormonal hell.
Yeah,
hell.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So then I, for this demographic, acupuncture can help somewhat. I find herbal medicine to be probably the most effective. And so I've started developing some signature formulas that are really good for regulating this terrible roller coaster that women go through at this stage, so that they can get their vitality back, their clarity, they like their physical aesthetic better, kind of thing. So yeah, that's another group that I deal with a lot. So I would say by and large, it's hormonal hell throughout the ages. And then with a large contingent of fertility patients that I hope to get out of that really awful version of hell that they're in. And then, there are women that are just dealing with niggly health things that are related to hormonal fluctuations. Maybe it's their skin, maybe it's their digestion or what have you. So really all of the things that hormones can affect are my wheelhouse. And I use a variety of modalities to try to get them feeling better.
Which hormones touch every aspect of your life. Every single complaint you have, look at hormones. I mean, even I read an article, I think in Healthline, it was like autoimmune disease on the rise. 78% of those suffering from autoimmune issues are women. And it comes back to this hormonal imbalance and, what is going on. And we are so sensitive because we're incredible, empowered beings that grow life and birth life and feed life. And we're amazing. And we also are suffering. And a lot of them are suffering in silence, because I don't feel like from my own personal experience, Western medicine really takes women's issues seriously.
Mm-hmm.
We come in, we can't think straight. We've gained weight. I mean, I had an endocrinologist tell me to just go buy bigger clothes. I was like, no, you don't understand. Oh yeah. I went in, my thyroid, like all my hair fell out. My thyroid was, I think my TSH was like 37 at this point after I had, which the higher, the slower. And I went in, I was like, you don't understand. I've gained 10 pounds in the last 30 days. He's like, well, you just need to buy bigger clothes. And I was like, well, I don't think so. It's because I've been the same weight since I was in high school. Nothing has changed in my lifestyle, diet, exercise. I said, but this is not working for me. So how have you seen your practice change, and especially over the last 18 months? And we're going to get into, the COVID-19 pandemic, the vaccination, the disease, how it's affected your practice and what you have seen personally.
So, my practice, I will say, I haven't seen it change a ton with the COVID pandemic, to be honest. I still see women trying to get pregnant. I still see women with hormonal issues. I think there was a higher degree of anxiety, but then again, I'm in New York City, so there's a high degree of stress and anxiety there anyway. But I think it reached sort of all new levels, and it mixed with a sedentary situation, because New Yorkers who are usually walking around all the time and at least burning off some of their steam that way were inside, plugged in, just anxious, watching the news, right? And so that was creating kind of an effect on the physiology. There was a lot of weight gain during COVID. I think the inactivity, some people took more to drinking than they usually might have, or more to eating. And so there was some variability in sort of the presentation of patients that I was seeing. The fertility patients, after the initial shutdown, where they actually shut down fertility clinics too, and there was massive outrage to say that this is essential medicine. But after those were back in full swing, I would say tons of women were undergoing IVF because they now had the freedom to move within their lives. Like, they didn't have to be at a morning meeting at 8 a.m. so they could go to the IVF clinic and do this, that, and the other thing. So the pandemic actually created a lot of freedoms for women in pursuing their fertility treatment, which was very interesting. So I was regularly seeing fertility patients throughout the pandemic. I think there was a higher degree of focus on overall wellness, people wanting to stay well. I think the vitamin industry blew up. Like, just so many people started taking immune boosting vitamins. You couldn't even get vitamin C and zinc for long periods of time. I was having to stockpile stuff to just have it in the clinic. Chinese medicine, Chinese herbs became very popular because there was a lot of news about how effective they were in fighting the pandemic. So reducing our symptoms if we were to contract COVID, or potentially preventing it. It's really hard to say, but there was a lot of news about how the herbal medicine has been very effective in the war against COVID-19. So I think, overall, there's been like some more interest in natural medicine in some ways, though some people were obviously also scared to come out. Inside the clinic, I mean, there's a lot of PPE now. Like, we have to wear masks. We're cleaning like crazy. As a small business owner, it's a lot more to handle. There's questionnaires, there's temperature checking, there's all the things to make sure that people are safe. They're spacing people out more. So,
what percentage of your population of clients contracted COVID-19 that you know of? Have you seen
barely
a decent?
Any.
Okay.
I think the patients that I'm seeing, because I see a lot of pregnant women, I see a lot of fertility patients, they were being ultra cautious in the name of their unborn child or potential, unborn child kind of thing. So they just were not exposing themselves because they didn't want to have any impact. But so I really had knock on wood, I had a very, maybe just like a handful, if that, of women that I saw that had COVID.
And then what is your opinion to vaccinate or not vaccinate? And I know this is a touchy subject for everyone. And really, to bring this up is to just provide information and remind everyone to be informed consumers, and always with information, and decide what's best for them. For example, I'm in close contact with our functional medicine provider in regards to vaccinating my 12-year-old daughter who's eligible. I am personally choosing not to do that at this time. This is something that we continue to touch base on every few months, and I'm saying, I've called even just recently, and it's like, okay, Delta variant's on the rise. Where are we with, do we vaccinate Eva or not? And her opinion was the risk of myocarditis in children was too high in healthy athletes, children, to justify the relationship of the vaccine and to get it at this point. Now that may continue to change. So as you've seen, patients, I'm sure, chose to vaccinate and chose also to not get vaccinated of childbearing age, people that were working with fertility. What is your opinion? What have you seen?
So by and large, since I serve an international population, but I serve primarily a New York population, and New Yorkers were hit so badly by COVID-19 that there is a very strong opinion in New York about vaccinating. So 99% of my patient population are vaccinated, 99.9 maybe, and very adamant about the social responsibility of getting vaccinated. And again, I understand because of, what happened, and we're trying to prevent that from happening again, right? But that doesn't change the fact that there are vaccine reactions. And I personally believe that people should have the personal choice according to what's going on with their health and their family. And I will probably be somewhat ostracized by some groups for even saying that much, but I do believe it's important to mention. I've seen a variety of vaccine reactions in my practice. And again, I don't necessarily think it means that you shouldn't get it, but it's important to be aware of these things. I had a postmenopausal woman who, after her second vaccine, started hemorrhaging, and then I look at sort of reported side effects, and that's actually one of them. So she ended up having to get an ablation, which is a procedure to somewhat cauterize the uterus. So, that's fairly significant. She lost a lot of blood. I've had a number of menstruating women start having irregular cycles. So bleeding several times a month, or losing their period altogether. So we know that it is definitely affecting the reproductive system of both men and women. My population being primarily women, I'm obviously seeing more so the effects on women. So irregular cycles, heavy bleeding in postmenopausal. I have had a small group of women who think that potentially the vaccine could have made them miscarry. We do not know if that was the case. We will never know if that was the case. And so, it's a really touchy subject, because OBGYNs are like, no, you should get vaccinated. Your potential to die from COVID as a pregnant woman is twofold that of somebody who's not pregnant. So I understand that the advice is coming from a good place. But then there's, a whole segment of the population that's kind of like, well, I've kept myself healthy so far, so do I need to do it, kind of thing. And then the other part of the population is like, absolutely, it's a threat to you, and it's a larger threat to society. So it's really tricky to kind of be navigating this. And fertility patients I've seen struggle a lot with the decision because it is taxing on the body. The vaccine is. Obviously, COVID is massively taxing on the body, but the vaccine is also taxing. It causes inflammation in the body, and inflammation is at the root of a variety of different disorders. Egg quality issues, for example, are a main struggle of a lot of fertility patients, and inflammation affects egg quality. Inflammation will affect hormonal balance. Inflammation will affect implantation of an embryo and the viability of a pregnancy. So, the side effect of the vaccine, if we can all agree that inflammation is definitely one of them, not everybody wants to willingly subject themselves to an inflammatory response, right? And they'll take the risk of getting COVID or not. I don't know which like what I would really recommend for people. I know that I've seen women get their vaccine in the midst of an IVF cycle, and I haven't seen the IVF cycle go so well. So, they just haven't produced a lot of eggs. They haven't produced good quality eggs, for example, or they had failed implantation with a good quality embryo, something like that. So what I usually say to women who are wanting to do the vaccine, understandably, is please do it away from your fertility efforts. Give at least a month, maybe two, for the body to calm down, do some acupuncture, make sure you're eating an anti-inflammatory diet, do some therapies to help get the inflammation down before you go and pursue trying to get pregnant again. Because I've seen women have reactions during their pregnancy, like they'll get the vaccine and then they'll have terrible migraines or hives or something. Then it comes down to the individual choice. Again, they just have to accept that if they're going to get the vaccine, they may get a reaction. They don't get the vaccine, they contend with the risk of COVID.
Everybody needs to weigh their own choices.
There's no right answer here.
No, I think for me personally, so I got 1 dose of the Moderna vaccine. Mm-hmm. And my past history is a lot of inflammation. Like I said, adrenal fatigue, huge amounts of inflammation, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's. I mean, the list goes on and on. Chronic fatigue syndrome. I could go down the laundry list. And my reaction to the Moderna vaccine was so severe. I was like, anytime I would eat, my gut pain would be almost instantaneous. I was laying on the floor. Mm-hmm. And that happened for about a week to 10 days. And then the brain fog lasted for almost 6 weeks post. And so under the guidance of my own personal physician, we decided to continue to monitor my antibodies before I was able to subject my body to the second dose. And I'm still having that conversation, as a person who's only been given 1 dose of the vaccine. When we start talking about vaccine passports and limiting, restricting physical activities, or going to restaurants or going to see a movie, I get all of it. And also someone who is personally suffering their own health journey, I had to make the decisions for myself. Now, I also wear masks in public, even though they're not mandated personally. I limit my, interaction with people outside of our familial group and have continued to do that. So it is an interesting conversation because while I'm not dealing with fertility issues, I'm dealing with chronic inflammation issues of my own. And so just reminding everyone to be informed consumer, I think as a country as a whole, there's so many varying extremes from really, really bright, intelligent people that we trust. And I have, doctors on one side that says, absolutely not, don't do it. And the other side is like, you have to do it. And so it's really hard to discern the chatter. And I think anyone that's listening just needs to be reminded of that, as women, we are often told what we can and can't do with our bodies, and just reminded that you have the empowerment to make the choice for yourself.
That's it. And I think that our choices should be respected. I totally see the value of the vaccine. It came out when I was newly pregnant. And for me, I didn't feel comfortable to take it whilst I was pregnant. And I didn't find the OBGYN that I was dealing with at that point to be at all respectful of my decision to sort of lie low and be really safe, double mask, what have you. And so that was disconcerting for me that I was essentially being bullied into somebody else's viewpoint kind of thing. And being a practitioner of natural medicine, I see the power of my form of medicine to be able to protect us and antiviral capabilities and what have you. And I know that COVID-19 is a very serious condition, but I also think that there are other ways that we can be combating it. That said, I see the value of having a population that's vaccinated. So I see all sides of this, but I do somewhat resent the bullying. And I think that every individual case has to be considered. I have a son that has severe vaccine reactions, seizures and high fevers and what have you. And so it's not that I'm not a believer in vaccines, but I choose to make individual decisions in specific individual cases.
For women that are currently seeking the advice or are maybe dealing with some infertility issues, as the landscape of fertility changes, what advice do you have for them? What's an appropriate time to wait? Again, I'm sure it's individualized with each person and their own individual health concerns or maybe diagnoses, but what is your advice to them?
So I would say that seeking out knowledge is not a bad thing. Seeking out somebody to manage your case could be something that you could delay a little bit more. So when I look at introducing yourself to intervention, I view it as, okay, first, maybe you see a naturopath, an acupuncturist, somebody in the natural side of things to tell you, or a nutritionist even, to tell you what you could be eating, how you could be adjusting your lifestyle. Are there alternative therapies that could be enhancing your fertility or preparing your body and mind for baby, right? So first line is really like a softer, more gentle approach, and really taking responsibility for your own habits that could be either enhancing your fertility or getting in the way of your fertility. And so, we can seek out those guides, but I would say like lesser intervention to begin with, and to learn the things you need to learn to know that you're timing your intercourse properly, that you have learned your body and its rhythms. If you need more information, for example, if you are not sure you're ovulating because your ovulation predictor sticks are not showing anything, that maybe warrants going and getting checked out. Somebody like me could teach you how to learn about that by taking your temperature every morning and putting it into a chart. But if that's not something you feel that resonates with you, then you go to the doctor, they take your blood test, they do an ultrasound, confirm whether you're ovulating and whether there needs to be any action taken there. So the advice I would basically give is don't neglect the subtle things, the subtle interplay of things in your life that could be influencing your fertility. The other thing is to seek out the knowledge that you need to be empowered to take action. Because as I said, my demographic are high functioning, ambitious women, type A women that want to take charge. So take charge, but taking charge doesn't necessarily mean going and, taking charge with an IVF cycle. Maybe it's, taking charge of those more subtle aspects of your life, your nutrition, your ability to cope with stress. Maybe it's integrating some acupuncture or something like that before you go take on the big guns. Because I will say that I see a ton of women that thought they were taking charge of their fertility by going into IVF, only to have IVF cycles fail and be back to square one. And then have to sort of detox from that whole thing, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, right? So seek out the knowledge, start with lesser intervention, take responsibility for your own actions and your own lifestyle is essentially what I would give for advice to start.
I think that's really beautiful and very poignant, right? I think we, in our society, discredit the power we have over diet, lifestyle, stress, those things that we do have under control. And they're not always the answer, but it's a really good place to start. And it's generally free. You can start to work on that stuff on your own. And there is a lot of education out there. And as someone who is a focus on women's health and an expertise in fertility, how do you deal with stress? What does self-care look like for you?
That's a great question. I am very reliant on my own methods. I do a lot of acupuncture. I take a ton of herbs. One of the reasons why I've gotten so good at developing formulas for women is because I've tested them all on myself. And I too like to have a clear mind. I like to be high functioning. I like to get a lot of things done in a day, check all the boxes. And so I understand my demographic and I understand that, we all just want to be effective and accomplishing things. And so I just find the balance through the methods that I've recommended. I eat a super clean diet. I try to get adequate rest. I go to bed early. I meditate. I do acupuncture. I take herbs. I take vitamins. I do all the things. And does it establish 100% of balance? No. That is always sort of in and out, right? Like it fluctuates our relative balance kind of thing. But the way that I take care is through the things I mentioned and just constantly exercising that practice and that discipline and knowing that we function best when there is a balance of rest and healthy lifestyle with the output that we're giving every day to everyone in our world.
I love that. That's beautiful. And if someone's interested in getting in touch with you and learning more about your practice, where can they find more information on you?
Sure. Thank you. I can be found by contacting the Naturna Institute. So Naturna Institute in New York City. I do virtuals and I do in-person appointments. I also have a podcast called Fertility in Focus, which is obviously all things fertility and lifestyle. So I just love to empower women with tidbits of knowledge and informative interviews with experts on that podcast, or through Instagram. I'm at Naturally CB or at Naturna _Institute.
I love it. And check out that podcast. I will put all the links in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time, Dr. Burns.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun.